Flooded homes and streets and fallen trees. These are the scenes of plastering the news all weekend. Quantifying the damage won't be easy, though. Irene may end up costing the insurance industry several $billions. Robert Hartwig is with us now. He is the president and chief economist at the Insurance Information Institute. Bob, thanks so much for coming in to speak with Matt and I. So how much do you think this is going to cost? We've been hearing estimates of $3 billion, which is a lot, but that's down from initial estimates, which were $14 billion.
Well, that shows you the hazards of trying to estimate how much a storm will cost when it's thousands of miles away. So at this point, we're looking at various estimates. It's still early. $3 to $5 billion in terms of privately insured losses is what we're looking at this point. So this is tens of thousands of claims ranging from the Carolinas up through Maine.
Now, how tricky is it? Richard Falkenrath was with us. He spent some time in the Bush White House. He was also head of counterterrorism here in New York City. And he said it really becomes a land grab game in Washington about who pays for what, how the money is allotted. From where you sit, how do you see the process?
Well, property casualty insurers are the economic first responders after major disasters like this. More money will be poured into communities from the Carolinas through New England by private insurers than any other source, bar none. The federal government resources will come later. People will apply for grants. They'll get them weeks or months later. Many times they'll actually have to pay them back. If you want to recover from a disaster, there's no substitute for private insurance.
Bob, I don't want to put you on the spot, but in a way, I think there's a lot of people that have similar questions. What if you make a call and you say that your home has damage that's water damage, but then do you find that insurance companies try to be slippery and say, well, you had hurricane insurance, but not water damage?
We saw that in Katrina, right? We saw Katrina and it was kind of overturned.
Absolutely not. First of all, no analogies here to Katrina whatsoever. Completely different events. We've got an event here where there's clearly wind damage, and in some cases there's clearly water damage. If it's flood, in other words, the water is coming from below, that's not included in your standard homeowners or business insurance policy. You may have a coverage from the National Flood Insurance Program. If it's water that was driven in by the rain, for instance, or the wind blew in your windows and the rain came in that way, that kind of water damage, in fact, will be covered. But it's very clearly spelled out in your insurance policy. On your first page of your policy, it talks about your hurricane deductible.
Although that's what the insurance company said after Katrina as well, right? And the state said, listen, if you don't cover this, you're not going to do business in this state anymore.
No, that's not what happened. In the wake of Katrina, some pretty slippery trial lawyers, some of whom are now in federal penitentiary cracking rocks for bribing judges, in fact, tried to confuse consumers about what was covered and what was not. Ultimately, it was very clear in the end that, in fact, the wind damage was covered if flood damage, including storm surge, was not.
All right, well, that's some clarity, especially for Matt Miller, who's going to be digging out or floating something.
My damage was water coming
kitchen.
from above. So we'll see. I don't even know if it goes beyond my premiums, but obviously a lot of people had serious damage caused by the rains, right? But that you say would be covered in hurricane damage.
If it's wind-driven rain, that sort of thing is covered by your homeowner's policy, yes.
To what extent are companies reaching out to you and sort of using your expertise as they deal with all these claims?
Well, quite a bit. In fact, we're involved in catastrophes all around the world. It's been a very busy year, by the way. In fact, I was actually supposed to be in Joplin, Missouri today, meeting with the mayor of Joplin, and I couldn't get out of town. And I was in Tuscaloosa recently and was very proud to be able to say that in both of those communities, insurers are paying about $2 billion to business owners and homeowners in those communities to help them rebuild. And in fact, if you talk to those individuals, very pleased with the progress, and these communities are getting back on their feet.
Is it worse? I mean, we see so much coverage of especially tornadoes over the last year and hurricane storms, but I'm not sure if that's because the media is more on the story or if because we're really seeing more tornadoes and hurricanes.
We're actually seeing more disasters in the United States. We're on a steady upward trend over time, and in fact, this year so far is already the 7th most expensive year in U.S. history for catastrophe losses.
Which gives then insurance companies room to raise rates, I would guess.
Insurers incorporate these long-term trends into their rates. They have to. They have to reflect these losses, and ultimately this is going to be determined what the cost of insurance is, not only in coastal areas, but around America.
Bob, thanks for coming in.
Glad to be here.
Bob Hartwig, president and chief economist at the Insurance Information Institute.